Well, so this meetup this month is a little bit different from the ones that we normally have. If you've been to our PNSQC meetups before, there's usually a speaker, someone who's got like a presentation, or maybe they're doing like an upcoming talk, and we've got a couple of those coming up later this year. But I thought it would be fun if this month, since we're talking about automation, if we just kind of had a more informal discussion and talked about, whatever people were interested in, and see how that went. So if you guys read the event description, there were some ideas about things that we could talk there. But I've also got a few ideas as well, and Moss has a few ideas as well in case there needs to be some inspiration. But essentially, my first question, at least, or just to get people interested in sharing some stories or stuff, is I want to find out if there's anyone who's got something that they're dying to talk about, or some fun story that they want to share in regards to something that they've been doing with automation recently, or and really anything just to get the ball rolling. Because I'm sure all of you are pretty interested in something, or came out tonight either virtually or in person to hear something or talk something about automation. So I open the floor to anyone who wants to pitch in either an idea or something that they've been working on. And if it's quiet for a little bit, then I'll pitch in something, but I wanted to see if someone else had something that they were excited to talk about. Oh, no takers, huh? No, no one's super excited. Oh, boss has a question. Oh, there's stuff coming in the chat. What does automation mean to you?
We have a
Wants
request.
to learn and implement automation, would love to help educate my workspace. Um, Alana, if you're not too shy to come on mic and maybe talk a little bit about like a little context about what's going on at your workplace and why folks are interested in automation, that could be helpful.
Oh, I am a little shy, but I'll try. Um, Hello, my name's Alana. It's nice to meet you, Jeremy, and everyone. Um, and thanks for gathering today to talk about this topic. As I said, I've got probably about 4.5 years of experience in QA. Um, and I work for an education software company right now, and all of our testing is manual. I mean, we don't even really even do continuous delivery or anything. We're kind of small. And I've done a lot of the things that I think are pretty standard for QA professionals, right? Test suites, regression testing, smoke tests, test cases. And I'm just at a point, I'm one of two QA professionals in my organization, and I'm the one with the most experience at this point. And while I feel like kind of these basic testing tasks we have down fairly well, I'd like to both progress my career to a senior level and also just provide better leadership for my company because I think we could really benefit from it. And so I'm trying to learn different higher level topics like risk analysis, security, and definitely automation. It's tough because for us in particular, our software ports into another system. It's kind of like an online textbook with assessments that ports into something like Blackboard, Canvas, and all of those. So our front end automation options are not super streamlined, but I have used Postman in the past, and we do have backend API as well as assessment data that could potentially be streamlined for testing. And I would like to be able to bring in some automation to help myself learn and to maybe just take some of the weight off of testing of our engineering team and our QA team, which is only two people, by the way. So I'm not even sure, like, I'm trying to figure out how do you decide? Like, I think one of the points in this description is how do you decide what to automate? That's a big deal. And we've tried talking about it, but I feel like the conversation doesn't get anywhere. So I'd like to empower myself and other people to figure out what do you automate? How do you decide that? both from a business perspective and from a workflow perspective? And then what are the best tools and ways to automate that? Which languages are best to focus on for learning that? I have like a tiny smattering of everything and I need to focus. So I'm sorry that was really long. Thanks everyone for listening. And that's my current perspective.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I didn't realize until after I put you on the spot there. So sorry about that, but that definitely gets us going, gets the ball rolling. I also wanted to say that I think that you're further along than you think you are because you have already been thinking about, you know, do I need front end automation? Oh, but my systems are more like interconnected with third-party systems, or I've been looking into API automation. And I think that's definitely a big part of it. It's like what automation is actually going to make the most difference or be the most impactful. And that's definitely one of the key things in deciding what you're going to automate and how you're going to go about doing it is figuring out what's going to be the most value. You were also talking about like you have a little smattering of different programming language knowledge that so like picking programming languages I would say in that regard, I know you're a small team, but I would find out again, what programming language probably means the most to your company in terms of what would your other QA coworker find comfortable in their career progression. What are the other software engineers using to write their code? Can it be something that can be integrated with the development code and run alongside the development code instead of it being written in a completely different programming language or framework or even a no code solution. Those are fun to talk about as well. Just like Moss just wrote in the chat there about Smart Bear. Cypress is another fun framework. So there's a lot of things to consider. I only just touched the tip of different things to think about. I don't know if anyone else wanted to chip in with something that they kind of learned as they were going through the process of converting their company from manual to automated testing, something that was like really that gave them a lot of wisdom.
I'll just
So
put it in the chat, but if your developers are using JavaScript and you want them to be involved, especially if you're a small team, then picking a language like JavaScript would be advantage because then they could help out. They could be part of the solution. Whatever the language is, maybe pick what if it's a .NET shop, choose .NET maybe for your automation suite kind of a thing.
Definitely second that. Having resources on site that can guide you in your development of automation is going to be invaluable. You don't have to go look online for, hey, how do I do this? You're going to do that to some point. But any syntax or, hey, this isn't working, they're going to be able to look through your code and say, oh, you right here is you have a problem.
yeah, this is Keith at McMiniman. So I wanted to follow up on Alana's question about API automation. I'm in a similar situation where I work on a fairly large system and my group specializes directly on the APIs, which our current solution is a lot of coding, but in the same language as the devs use, and I'm embedded within the team. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about flexibility and lower code solutions for APIs.
I'm gonna preface by saying that my experience has actually been more in programming language automation frameworks and less in no code solutions. But ultimately, it keeps coming back to that question of how are you going to get the most benefit out of what you pick and what you write or what you use. because there's a lot of buy-in that goes into it with everyone on your team, as I've said. I saw in the chat folks were talking about different programming languages, different frameworks. There are definitely some that get a lot of talk about what the new hottest thing is, or what tends to be what's used at most companies. But honestly, there's so many different projects. I don't think any one project that any of us, are currently working at our current jobs for is alike. That it really just depends on what you need to test, how you're going to get people on board, and how you're going to get people to use it. And part of that is also the idea. I'm sure some of you have already heard this, but for those who aren't familiar with the idea of shifting left, making it so that your work can be used by more than just the QA engineers on your team, or just used after the coding has been done and merged. The idea that all variants of testing, if folks are familiar with the testing pyramid where you've got unit testing and integration testing and end-to-end testing, the idea that it really doesn't need to be developers who only run or write unit tests. It doesn't need to be QA engineers who only run or write end-to-end tests. There's the idea that's in practice at a lot of companies about being able to have QA engineers able to read and help peer review unit tests, and have developers be able to run the end-to-end tests that QA engineers might traditionally be writing, so that you're not continuously throwing work back and forth over this garden walls, I like to call it. But yeah, did anyone else have more thoughts on that?
This is Eric again. Secondary, not primary, but think of long term, who's going to maintain your code, right? You start doing this, you're loving it. Somebody else makes you an offer and you take it. You don't want everything you've done go to waste. So there, and again, is great for if your company is using C#, find something that's going to do C#. Find somebody that can maintain this. Yeah.
And get your managers buy-in before you sink into it too. Because
Absolutely.
they're the ones that are going to shoot you in effigy afterwards.
That's what I was going to ask in terms of, like, for example, in Alana's case, should she figure out not only what are the devs using, but also what sort of licensing they might need to use, and what sort of runtime environments they might need to use, and just kind of look at those, and then you have some choices to run by the managers to say, I think we should start regression testing this small part of the system, and we can do it this way.
Yeah, and I wouldn't try to cover everything all at once. I would, like any good problem, I would try to do an exercise where you're assessing both priority and severity of of how your application works. Try to break up that, and also once you've done that, try to tackle the things that have the highest priority, or essentially the things that matter most to your program or application, as well as stuff that's got the highest severity, or stuff that's going to be impact the most amount of people, your end users who are going to be using your application. So that's another great exercise for breaking work down. And I would also suggest personally that API automation is probably going to be the most bang for your buck if you had to pick between going with front end and back end testing, because those tests are quick. You can very quickly write them, very quickly run them, very quickly react, and really grow that portion of your code coverage our test coverage much faster. And then you can write in some front end tests if those are even applicable. Um, that those are my thoughts on functional testing. I know folks are writing here in the chat a lot of their thoughts as well. One of the things that I've been kind of interested in, just to pose a new topic if there's bite on it, is more non-functional automation testing, whether that's accessibility testing, if that's performance testing. I was actually looking at snapshot testing for some UI stuff that I'm doing at work the other day. I wanted to know if other folks had specific experience with non-functional automation testing and what's worked for them.
What's worked for me is implementing the Q tools for the accessibility.
Sorry, could you say that again?
The QX
Oh,
accessibility
QX.
tools. The Q, DEQUE.
Oh, DQU. Okay.
Yeah. They've got a full suite of you can get the Chrome plugin to do accessibility testing manually, or you can use their library to put into most of the standard languages, JavaScript, Cypress stuff.
Okay, so that's for accessibility testing. I have not heard of
Yes,
DQ before. Nice.
the Q is a big player in the accessibility space, and their AXE tools are pretty stellar. So you should check them out.
This is Ying. I'd like to make a couple of comments about both the functional and non-functional, for that matter. But the earlier question relates to what to automate, maybe in a shop that doesn't have continuous integration, DevOps, that type of thing. And one thing that I've encountered that project find useful is you work with the project owner to decide kind of main areas you want to do smoke tests. Like when you have a new software release, there are some key things you want to run through. Sometimes very helpful, like you roll out a new release before even people showing up to work. If it's not something that's 7x24, like for a business environment, overnight you run through the smoke test just to make sure that there's not something obviously in trouble and early identification of issues. I don't know if that term smoke testing is used a lot in different situations, but especially for shops where there's not continuous integration and you have like a main software release that maybe you want to automate those things for the smoke testing. With the non-functional, sometimes it's difficult to bring in a lot of tools. The earlier commenter talked about accessibility. The state of Oregon used a tool called Site Improve for accessibility testing. We care a lot about accessibility to support folks. Those of you don't know, there's a new federal rule that's going to make accessibility necessary for state and local governments, and probably will extend to large businesses as well. Lastly, I think one thing that can be automated, again, for kind of confidence level kind of testing, not real non-functional testing, but like you could these days spin up 20, 30 sessions, kind of testing simultaneously by allocating resources in the cloud. And you can consider that type of way to kind of work toward at least multiple instances. If your app, of course, for thousands of users at the same time, that's not going to get you there. But if sometimes it's 20, 30 instances, give you a good sense of, are you really ready for prime time? Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, those are awesome thoughts. Thanks, Inky. There's a very lively chat going on for those who are not coming to us remotely or virtually, and there were a couple of things that came up in it. One of those things was the idea of how you decide between manual and automation testing. Star specifically wrote that there are many orgs think all automation is good, but they're of the opinion there are advantages to both. Keeping some things not automated on purpose is smart. Just having to think about and make decisions, defend those decisions. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Um, I would also say in terms of balancing automated and manual testing, I go back to the priority and severity um, calculations to figure out if there's something that is really important, I would make sure that you automate it. And also, if there's something that's really tedious or something that doesn't really make sense, even if it's easy to test, if you're having to do it over and over again, or there's something hard to test and it's much easier for a machine to just get instructions to do it for you, if it would take you a hot second to figure out all the different buttons that you have to click or all the different endpoints you have to call and then feed in data from that context. Those would probably be good times to automate as well. That's Joe just wrote, you can't and shouldn't automate everything, and that is also very much true. There are a lot of great reasons to manually test. I think Boss shared with me a cool website that talks about the testing quadrants, which for those who don't know, each quadrant essentially says here are things, kinds of testing that make sense to do manual. Here's kinds of testing to do automated. Here's some that you could do both automated and manual testing. One of those things that's really good for manual testing would probably be some exploratory testing, some visual testing as well for UI. I always like to manually test things first before I automate them. In fact, to automate something, find it really helpful to really know how the thing works and be able to go through it myself before I can expect a computer to. And yeah, Moss just put in the link or the website that I was referring to in the chat, which is great. So yeah, I think there was a question a little bit ways up. Alana asked about when to use smoke testing. I've been talking a lot. If someone wants to help answer that question about what kinds of issues to do some smoke testing for.
Smoke testing is a completely different idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I think she was referring to smoke testing in the sense of building out like an automation test suite that does smoke testing. Because I would recommend if you're gonna start automation, those would be the kinds of tests that you'd write first. Um,
If you can smoke test, you should automate it if you can.
I think of smoke testing as, like in the old sense where they'd plug in the circuit board and if smoke came off of it, then it was bad. So
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's
it's a
smoke test.
virtual smoke everywhere.
Yeah. So we had basically we'd have two very simple smoke tests for our system. One just to make sure that it actually built stuff when it built, and then the second one would just go through a kind of a simplest end-to-end test just to make sure that the simplest end-to-end through test was not broken. And those were our two smoke tests. I guess maybe the first one might be called a sanity test or a sanity check, just to make sure that it really is working and it's not just sitting there and doing nothing.
Hi, my name is Bhushan Gupta, and there was Hi, is that Ian?
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem, no problem. I think when Elaine was asking about automation, I think she also brought up security. Security is a non-functional aspect of a system, and there is no effort, but there is effort, but there is no tool, I would say no automation like you have for regular software functional testing for security testing. However, there are some nice tools you can use to check the sanity of your application with respect to security. And it goes beyond the sanity. It also gives you some high level issues if they are in the software. In most of the time when you do automation, when you get the results, you are happy and you can conclude that yes, this functionality worked. When you talk about security tools such as ZAP or ZAP is the most popular tool at this point. You're not done with testing. You still have to go and run your manual testing as a penetration testing, because all those tools which are available today, they don't give you the complete picture of the security of your application. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thanks, Bhushan. We've yeah. Is there somebody else there? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Yinki again. I think when you bring up like web systems, a lot of time the underlying content management system, like if you use WordPress, you have to worry about the vulnerabilities of your plugins and that sort of thing. And your web apps is sitting on a platform like that, then there's these type of considerations that obviously following up on what Bhushan just said, the patching and some of those things are not necessarily automation or even testing. It's just traditional IT services management. And especially in a large enterprise, those things then become kind of integral to overall quality considerations. And so those things cannot be forgotten. And then, of course, penetration testing, a lot of tools are available, for like a WordPress environment to support automated testing of those platforms, for obvious kind of issues. I mean, it's like an entire subject all to itself, but those are among the considerations since Bhushan brought up security and platform level kind of concerns.
So there's been a lot of talk about picking automation frameworks and what makes sense to automate and non-functional testing, but what about actually implementing this automation frameworks? It's one thing to say that you're gonna do it and that you want to do it, but it's a whole nother thing to actually do it. And so one of the topics that I had was to ask a little bit about if anyone has recently gone through having to stand up a new automation framework or any sort of experience or something that is really was interesting to them, or they learned a lot from what they were interested in sharing with the group. And yeah, it looks like Moss added a question, a stumper that you've run into and trying to automate UI testing, anything in regards to just getting kind of stuck as you build out either the framework itself or test cases.
Hey, this is Keith in the room again. So I have the experience of migrating API tests off of Cypress and onto a straight Mocha framework, and then basically building a data-driven interpreter to basically describe the test separate from the code. So wondering if anybody else had experience at something like that. It's I didn't have time to fully carve out time. I had to keep testing at the same time. but yes, it's getting mature to the point where I can say to somebody, okay, here's an API, here's the steps that you should take. Now write the descriptions, and then we'll just the types, or the Mocha boilerplate is 30 lines. I was just retrieving my code and ended up talking.
Okay, Joe wrote in the chat, start all automation projects small, automate the smoke test first, and expand on it. Yep, definitely. That was some of what we were talking about. One funny story that I had that's stuck with me for a while because of how ridiculous it was. And I couldn't find the answer to it for such a long time, but well, I've done a lot of UI automation for different companies I've worked for. I could never figure out with this particular plugin that I was, or framework that I was using, which was WebDriver IO at the time, and I couldn't figure out when I was running it how to keep JavaScript alerts, so the little dialog boxes that show up on the browser, how to actually interact with them. Whenever I would run my tests, they would just like disappear immediately, and I couldn't like accept or close out the box in the way that I wanted it to. And it also broke some of my tests. And it turned out that it was like a really specific, like deep rooted Selenium issue that I had to like dig through documentation to figure out that I had to change this one particular advanced configuration setting to make it so that the prompts were handled so that I could actually interact with them instead of them auto closing. So that would be my fun story. I know Moss has talked a lot about you logging in with UI. Did you want to share one of the stories that you shared with me?
Sure, I guess so. I this was one thing that I was trying to test more recently, and I I wanted to be able to grab the handles of different. It was a video editing system, and I wanted to be able to grab the handles of the different frames in the on the system. And then the guy explained to me, the dev explained to me that the video editing system was written as if it were a game, basically. Like each screen was assembled together and then it blit onto the screen. So it was just an image. So there was no handle at all to grab, which made it a lot harder to do any automated UI testing. It really had to be pushed back to the system testing, the unit testing instead. So that was a surprise.
Yeah, another fun one for me was I was interviewing somewhere some years ago, and they wanted me to write a some test automation test cases for their UI and for logging in, and part of their UI actually had a CAPTCHA on it, and so I had to figure out how, because the whole point of a CAPTCHA is that it's trying to weed out an automation or a bot. And it's like, is this on purpose, or do you just not know that your website, that what you're asking me to do has a freaking CAPTCHA on it? And so I had to like figure out how to interact with
Right.
a browser window within a window and do some weird hack where I could click on it. So that was fun. Steven wrote something in the chat that I wanted to share for folks that are at the McMinimans. He says, I have some test automation from years ago at Intel. Who's the build master for the BMC, and he built an internal only web page for different versions of the BMC for 6 to 8 different server boards that were being developed in India, China, and the US. He had an automation test station in the lab that took a new build, installed into whichever several test systems are most appropriate and ran a set of sanity and smoke tests. It would then remove the test results and the images into one of several directories for this is good or this broke. That was pretty fun. Yeah, yeah, the Joe, the captchas were that I was pretty sure once I saw the captcha, like I still wrote the test, just it was more so of curiosity for me rather than like this company is doesn't really know what they're asking for, what their QA team should be doing. So I did not move forward with them. I think that was one of the few times where I actually declined an interview. Um, so is there anyone else who hasn't maybe had a chance to share anything either on the chat here or out there in the McMinimans? Anyone else have any ideas or questions that they wanted to pose to the rest of the group?
Yeah, hey, my name is Palmer. I am interested in performance testing. My company we don't really have it right now. We don't have a baseline, but we have a product that we really need some kind of performance testing because we have um, uptime requirements and we have a lot of users of the platform. So I'm interested in hearing what other people are using or your experience with performance testing and the kinds of tests that you focus on first getting started.
Yeah, I do love to learn a little bit more as well about performance testing. I have a few ideas, but I will let someone else speak up if they want, because I know I've been talking a lot. Or I can jump in, that's cool too. Um, for performance testing, I know you mentioned not having a baseline yet. Is there a particular reason why you don't? Is there not buy-in at your place of work? Is there trouble
It's
getting those baselines?
No, it's not. I think it's just been that there's so many moving pieces, there's so many different priorities that it's just never cropped up as the priority. And so nobody's been tasked with working on it. And we have a very small QA team, and we're really mostly focused on like regression testing um, and just testing releases as they're going out. And so, yeah, most of it is just a lack of prioritization and time.
Has there been an issue about performance in the field?
There has been, yes, and that's why it's coming up now, because we've had multiple events over the last year that have all come down to we know that there's a single part of the app that has performance issues, and there's a whole project around actually like rebuilding that. And so now the big discussion is, okay, now we're going to have this new version of this product that we know historically has had performance issues when we encounter a lot of load. So how do we know that this new version is actually going to sustain the load that the old version has not been able to? That's kind of the question and what's really driving this right now.
So now that it has been, probably will have now higher priority than it has had in the past.
Precisely, exactly. Yep. So there's definitely a lot more organizational buy-in to do this.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Right, and as Joe wrote in the chat, really as simple as the key is to start something, and that has been my experience at every company I've worked at where performance testing was important or people were interested in it, it was always like it just won't start because product or you're as QA folks, you're always, focused on getting the next release out or focused on functional testing or building up work around that, but not really considering the scalability of your product until actually something happens. And so sometimes being proactive is what you need to do. And it's good for your career as well. Even if you have to do it for in your personal time, just play around with it, and then bring something that you've learned to work, or try to get some time set aside from your supervisor or manager to be allowed to do some experimentation or research and grow your skills. Uh, I find it hard to make that kind of request at a good company, at least, to make that request and being denied from being able to learn more. So I've always had success with that. Um, and then also in terms of actually starting something up, I think you briefly mentioned what other folks are using. My experience, which is granted a little bit limited, but mine has been for JavaScript, it's been with Case 6. And then for Java, it's been with Grafana. Um, and they're both great tools to use. There's also JMeter as well, but I have not used JMeter. Um, I think Case 6 is probably the most it's been the one that's been the easiest for me to like pick up and learn because I've worked mostly with JavaScript stuff, but the essentially the first thing you do is you can borrow, if you have some functional automation already, you can borrow some of those tests and then add in some tracking functionality to actually measure how long those like API calls took to make, or UI test performance testing is a whole another beast. So I'm thinking specifically about API testing, but there's a lot that you've probably already written for at least to get the test started, and then it's more just like the logging of information. Um, and you don't have to worry too much about getting the requirements or the uh, at the start, as long as you can get that baseline. Uh, does anyone else have any more thoughts about that? You were talking more about API automation, right? Or were you also interested in UI performance testing?
Both, and the specific area of the platform that is causing this, that that they're rebuilding because of the performance issues, is a UI, is a front end, and the performance issues are in the framework that's used to build the front end. So that would probably be the first priority for the business, is wanting a baseline for those UI tests. But we do have, like you were mentioning, we have existing UI tests for this surface, and so using Selenium, and so there probably are some internals of Selenium that actually I've been looking into recently that we might be able to use to get some of those data points.
Yeah, my experience with performance UI testing has mainly been with WebDriver IO. So there's especially if with, or at least when I was using it a couple of years ago with the dev tool, or dev tool protocol and integration they've got with Google Chrome. So
Yeah,
I've
Chrome.
dabbled, yeah, a little bit with that, but um, probably not enough to be super smart about talking about it further.
No, but that's helpful just um as a direction to look in. Yeah, because I think, yeah, like Joe was saying, the key is to start something. I'm definitely feeling that I can get in my head about these things and try to like think of all of the requirements and what exactly are the goals of this. But often I find that when I just go for it, the path emerges, right? And so that's a good reminder.
Yeah, and Stephen wrote, I've noticed it's actually hard not to reinvent the wheel given how many different tools exist out there, and it certainly can be very overwhelming. Um, but it goes back to what we talked about closer to the start of this about how you want to pick what makes the most sense for everyone who's working alongside you, and what you're most comfortable with and what best solves the problem that you're trying to achieve. So it's the research to figure out what makes sense can be a little daunting, but don't spend too much time on it. Just sort of pick one, go with it, make a proof of concept, and keep the scope of that proof of concept pretty small and very particular, maybe a couple test cases or a couple of baselines that you're measuring for. And that proof of concept will tell you all you need to know once you're done with it about whether it's gonna be feasible to continue on that path or you should, abandon it.
This, can I mention one thing about that?
Yeah.
This is Moss. One thing I like to do is, okay, if you know that Friday afternoon will be a little bit slower, set aside 3 hours, 4 hours on Friday afternoon where you're going to try out one of those tools and apply it to a specific problem that you have. And then, maybe do that once a week for 4 weeks, and then you have 4 examples and see which one actually works for you. Because sometimes it sounds good in, everything that you've read. And then when you go to actually apply it, it's like, oh, this doesn't work for me because X, Y, and Z, And so it's good to do a little research and, don't just read about it, just, get in and try it I like Friday afternoons because they're a little bit slower, but it depends on your schedule.
Yeah, and to expand on what you're saying there and what Jeremy said, it's what makes sense. So even if starting with some manual timings for performance, if that's what makes sense, do it. So at least you have something. Then once you can get, the understanding of what kind of metrics you're looking for, make a smoke test that gathers that same information for you. And then, you can build upon that until it gets bigger and bigger until you're connecting, all collecting all the performance data you're looking for. But you got to start small, start with what you know, start with what makes sense and what's the easiest for you, because that's where you can start making progress.
Yep. Stephen wrote, the thing I see is it's hard to know what is even there. I love this GitHub repo that I just put in chat, but for those who are at McMinimans, that is a GitHub repository called Awesome Test Automation. I don't know if folks are familiar with the Awesome series of GitHub repositories that kind of exist out there, but there's like this collection of different GitHub repositories that start with the word awesome. They're essentially huge lists of like really great resources. So if you're not super worried about being overwhelmed, you just want to know all your options, that would definitely be the place to start to go there. And it's very well organized. So even though it might be a little overwhelming, it's definitely organized in a way where if you're looking for a particular category of things, in this case, it's organized by programming language first. And within that page, it organizes by functional automation frameworks, mobile automation frameworks, which we haven't even touched on mobile stuff, which is, I feel like that should be more popular, have come up by now, but it's a whole nother topic. And yeah, it's great, great resources. So did anyone else have anything else to add to that topic?
I think not, this is a new topic, but Jan wanted to address AI. So go ahead.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, go ahead. Unless you didn't want to talk, which is fine.
That's okay. Sorry, I was in the ladies' room there. So anyway, yeah, I mean, of course, we always have to bring this up because everybody else is bringing up AI all the time. But I mean, I was just curious what your approach would be to something like that. I mean, I don't think that there's probably hasn't been a lot of AI automation, I mean, AI development yet, but it's probably coming down the pike pretty soon.
Oh yeah.
And there's lots of AI automation things, but it's still so new. It really, I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's still so new. It's a hard subject.
Yeah. Well, especially where I work for a defense contractor. I don't even know whether they would even allow us to use something like that.
I think it still comes back to what Jeremy said. What makes sense? Do you need it? Do you need AI? I mean, I've been in this business for 30 plus years, and people told me automation was going to take my job away. It still hasn't. And now people are saying AI is going to take your job away, but it's not. But what do you really need AI for your testing efforts? I don't know. I haven't found a good use for it yet. It's definitely an interesting technology, but there's still so much of it can't do. There's still so much that requires a human. That is it worth the effort? I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
And I'm not sure either, but I guess my concern is maybe with cybersecurity. That could be an issue. So I'm just trying to think the other things. They've used it as justification for not to have QA, thinking that AI will test all the code.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
No.
When you say cybersecurity, what do you mean by that, Jen?
I guess, with AI, I'd probably be more security than anything else. There are some things that we maybe don't know a lot about AI yet. And there are probably some cybersecurity issues. I don't know which ones, will pop up. I mean,
so one of the things which has probably been studied to some extent is data poisoning. If you look at the life cycle of how these regenerative systems, LLMs, are built, most of our that they are based on data training with the data.
Mm-hmm.
And then the data training, to start with, you have your own data, which you trust and you believe. But after you have done that, then you go out and get more and more data, and that data could be good or bad. So depending upon the situation, if your data is bad, then your results would be bad too. So that there comes the point where people can intentionally provide you a set of data which is poison, which is wrong, and that would then result to wrong wrong information. So and that's one aspect of cybersecurity when we talk about generative AI.
Okay. So you just probably the solution to that is someone needs to probably test or look at your data, the data set first, and make sure that it's all cleaned up and
What, so
Okay.
there's so much data, you don't really have time to do that. It's just that your source of data needs to be, I guess, checked most of the time.
Reliable.
okay. So
Well, that's one of the at least that's one of the security aspects of generative AI.
okay. I'm
Mhm.
just pretty new. I'm just learning about it. I'm just delving into an AI course right now. So there's so much that I don't know yet. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I wanted to share a couple of things that I was thinking about while Bhushan was talking. First, I put a link in the chat. Specifically, I guess we can share it after meetup with everyone else who's not on the Zoom call. But
You can share your screen
essentially,
if you want, Jeremy.
what?
You can share your screen if you want.
Oh, I guess I could. Very briefly, give me 1 second to do that. This window.
This is when
Yeah. So, this I just came across this last week. There's tons of articles like this, but it was funny that you brought it up because this website that I got in one of my testing newsletters that I subscribe to has various different ideas about use cases for using ChatGTP or some sort of generative AI for not just testing but also automation. Um, I know that it's not a secret that the code that's generated is usually garbage or not the most sophisticated or most optimal solution, but I would definitely recommend, especially for those who are still learning how to program or those who need a little extra help or have doesn't have someone, another QA person, they're the only QA resource if they needed like a buddy, a virtual buddy to give it a shot. Write out a nice creative prompt, like this one, I guess, and see what you get. Um, just try running it, see what happens. It's always easier for me to have some sort of boilerplate or something that gets you at least, getting somewhere 50%, 60%. It's better than being at having nothing. So definitely it's something to consider. I'm gonna stop sharing because that's all I wanted to share. Um, I also wanted to say, in regards to using AI and it being a security issue, at least in terms of putting in company related confidential stuff, there are actually services, and I learned this at my current job because we actually, for a brief period of time, was working on a generative AI solution for our company. There are services that allow you to keep the data private to your company or internal to your company. You can set them up, like for example, in Azure, it has its own connection to OpenAI. They have a partnership where you can set up all of the data that you're sending and receiving to stay within the company's internal services that they have spun up within Azure. So if that addresses some part of the security concern, I know it's not the entire
That's an
answer
important
to
one.
that. What?
Actually, that's a very important one. Like
Yeah.
our company has an Azure server that's on our VPN for developers to use to make sure that anything we submit does not go public.
Yeah.
And because as
Yeah.
soon as you start using a public service, all your intellectual property goes out the window.
Right. Another really cool thing that this is kind of off topic to automation, but I'm just going to bring it up because I find it cool, is that folks are developing these generative AI solutions to be able to integrate with your own company's data and being able do that and really expand the capabilities of your GPT based application is pretty cool, but that's not super related to automation, so I will stop there with that. And then for folks who may or may not know, we did have a talk very similar to this one about ChatGPT and generative AI back in December. I don't know if Moss, you have a link handy or know where to point people if we've recorded that meeting, but for folks who are more interested in generative AI, we did have a meetup about it and there were some interesting points and discussion that came out of that. I have not looked at the chat recently because I've been talking about a bunch of things that were on my mind, but if there is something that someone's been writing in the chat they want to bring up. Joe, and then Joe did write, once you start using AI to write code and test for you, you'll understand how it won't replace you anytime soon. Yeah, it's very true. But the models that keep coming out on the different chat GTP or like applications that have been coming out that have been more focused on coding and programming, they've been getting better and better, which is
I will say is that much like automation in general, for 30 years people have been telling me it's going to take my job away. It hasn't, but people are saying that about AI now. And what I would say back to that is AI won't take my job away, but somebody who knows it better will take it.
Yep.
So AI and use AI better than the other guy or the other gal or the other person, because they'll take your job away.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So I just took 2 courses on AI, one for machine learning from CMU and one on generative from Microsoft using Azure. And really all AI boils down to is a probabilistic filtering, to be honest, like a neural network type thing. But like you say, Joe, the reason I took these is because those who do know it better will be able to steer it ethically as well as inform companies, of what it can and cannot do. And the real way to try to start to use this, at least even not knowing anything about it yet, would be to go on ChatGPT or whatever and try to learn the prompt engineering to where you can specify more and more specifically what you're looking for. And they've got this thing called RAG, retrieval augmented I forget what the generation and that has to do with it having some of your data for the company and all the security concerns there in terms of how you handle it. But the point is, the more you get good at specifying your prompt in a more deliberate fashion, the more value whatever comes back will be in terms of how you're trying to use it. And that's really the point I wanted to make there, was play with it and see what you can do.
Okay, I just got started today. I just installed ChatGPT today, so some work to do, it sounds like.
Look up prompt engineering and then start to get a feel for that. That'll help you.
Okay, thanks.
And there's a lot of free courses out there for certificates on prompt engineering, which you can then it's a free course and it'll go through a very specific, it'll be more in detail than just the general internet.
Okay, and actually what I'm doing right now, it's actually a class through a business analyst group I'm part of, but certainly appreciate that. Have to learn prompting.
So a general question is, how much faith do you have in in a response that you get or a test case you get from ChatGPT?
Actually, there's Scott Adams wrote Dilbert. He does an interview with ChatGPT where he debates. I forget actually what he debates right now. I saw it yesterday, but the point is the level of detail that it goes into, or that this product gives him, is quite interesting. And the other two podcasts I've been listening to for basically being current on what's going on in AI in general, just the threat, the advantages, everything else. TWIML, TWIML, which is This Week in Machine Learning, and All In, which is four very rich guys talking, but they've been talking about AI a lot lately, and it's extremely informative.
Okay, and so the first one is TWIML, TWIML.
TWIML, yeah. This
Okay.
Week in Machine Learning.
Okay.
Sam something or other. I forget his last name. I butcher it.
Gotcha. And then All In is one word, just ALL.
It's probably two, but it's a podcast. You'll find it if you look for it.
Okay.
It's but be forewarned, those are billionaires talking. So
okay,
there's going to be, what do they say? User beware or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. No doubt. Thank you.
But the stuff they talk about is worldly stuff. So, and AI's, in that realm right now.
Okay.
And you want to listen to what those rich people are saying anyway. Every now and then it makes a difference.
Yeah, they've got some perspective that not everybody does. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sam Charrington, thanks.
So Moss pointed out that we have just a few more minutes left before we probably end the discussion part and at least the virtual part of the meetup. So if there's any burning questions or stories or things, any dying questions that you didn't get to that anyone has, now would be the time. Or if there's anyone out there at the McMinimans who wants to ask something. I know there's been a lot of folks on the call, but if there's any more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm here in person. Hi, I'm Calvin Deutschbein. I'm a professor, I guess, which was like interesting to everyone. I wanted to jump in on the AI thing briefly, just because so I'm looking at all of my students right now, and I've heard from their other professors that they try to cheat, which I don't believe. I don't think that's true. But it's been interesting, like looking at a lot of AI generated code in my classes and from my students and seeing how it's integrated. I wanted to point out that I've been using GitHub Copilot pretty religiously since the minute I gained access to it, and it has made my life a lot better, and it has not by producing good code. What it's done is it's like,
So sometimes before you've
it makes like the right number of parentheses, which is like, I don't know if you've ever like written code, but like when I do that, it always has the wrong number of parentheses in it, right? And very frequently I'll do things like spell a function wrong and then test something else for 12 hours and then find it the next day, right? And GitHub Copilot does not make those errors, and ChatGPT does. Gemini seems to be worse than OpenAI. But I think like something that's been really interesting for me about messing with Copilot is it definitely like reads the code I'm writing in the same document. It reads code both before and after where it's prompting. So it like auto-completes something. It's like, I don't know, Linus Torvalds called it autocomplete on steroids, which I think is like interesting. It's a lot more interesting than like just prompt engineering. So like, let me know and like report back on how the prompt engineering discussion goes. I didn't mess around with that at all. I just started writing code with the Copilot on, and it saved me a lot of typing. And the reason I sort of like was bringing this up and where I assumed we were going to go with AI is that I use it to write my tests, and I don't know if it's better writing tests than I am, right? But it tests a lot of corner cases in my code that I don't think I didn't not know about. I don't know how negatives work, but it covered a lot of things I was too lazy to write test cases for. And that
Number
was
brackets.
click. So I really liked all of that. And I don't know. I just wanted to plug all that. Go check out GitHub Copilot. And I guess I would say don't check out ChatGPT, but you can do whatever you want. You're adult. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think to add on to that, I think there are actually pros and cons to both services. It really depends on what you're doing. To preface, I do know about this wasn't always the case. This is very recent that Copilot now has a chatting function. But there was a period of time where it's like if you wanted to have a natural conversation with a AI bot to figure out how to write my code, you could do that. That would be a better experience than having the Copilot plugin in your IDE or your whatever you're writing your code in, and having it try to autocomplete what you're typing, and it guessing as to what you want based off of what you recently just wrote, or patterns that it's trying to figure out. So there can definitely be different uses between the different tools. That's less the case now as Copilot just came out with this chatting functionality. But as you were saying, using Gemini, using ChatGPT, seeing what gives you the best answer for what you're looking for. Yep. Right tool for the right job, have to know how to use them. Yep. Yep, all of that definitely, Joe.
And just to be clear, I agree with that if it's coding that you're doing only. If it's more than that, if it's like you're writing a document, then you'd want to involve the prompt. But yeah, that's and it's changing continuously, and that's where listening to the podcast will keep you informed.
Hey
Yeah,
guys, it's been great. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Moss does his plug-in, because there will definitely be some talks about generative AI at our conference if you wanted to take it away, Moss.
Thanks, guys.
Moss, you're muted.
Sorry, I just wasn't talking. I was still typing. But yeah, we're gonna have some good speakers at PNSQC on both sides of well, not I wouldn't say both sides. I'd say in different ways to view AI. Tariq King will be talking about humanizing AI. Matt Heusser and Michael Larson will be talking about using AI for testing. We have some other invited speakers and keynotes that'll be talking about AI. And we also will have as a keynote Michael Bolton, who will be talking about his tentative talk right now. He's not on the website, but his tentative talk right now is, what are we thinking? So he's going to work on that. But that's his view on AI right now. So yeah, and the conference is registration is open. See if you can get your work to pay for you to go, or if you can't, also there's a special deal for students for $99. So you can think about that. And yeah, I guess that's about all I have to say about the conference right now.
Yeah, I'll just plug also, since this is about automation, and we're talking about the conference, that Sophia McKeever will have a workshop at the conference about some automation work that they're very familiar with, and walking folks through like a hybridization of the page object and logical function models. They had a very brief talk about it earlier this year in January, but they'll be doing a full workshop for those who are interested in learning more about it. I put the link to that in the chat, or you can go on to PNSQC's website to learn more about that workshop. I think this is the end of it, Moss. You're mute, Moss.
We have one question in the room. Hold on.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna go.
a few weeks ago, there were a lot of people looking for jobs in this industry. Alex is online. Alex, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Alex. I work for Dexian as an account manager. We're an IT staffing and solutions firm. Wait, sorry, I couldn't be there today. My car broke down, so could not make it across town, unfortunately.
You can, this is Ying. I'm one of the board members. You can feel free to post your contact information on the chat.
Yeah, you got it.
Thanks, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess we're wrapping up today, and thank you, Jeremy, for presenting. This was kind of a we are always welcome. We're always welcoming new speakers for the meetups. And Jeremy, this is the first time he's done this. He did a great job, and I appreciate all the work that he put into it.
Yay!
Yeah, yay! Yankee has one more question. Yeah, there's an applause here in the room for Jeremy.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I wish I wasn't sick. I would have loved to have been there, but what did you say of mice and men or something in your email?
Oh, the best laid plans of mice and men are oft led astray.
Yeah, that one.
Well,
you did an awesome job, Jeremy. Thank you.
Yes, this is Yinki. Just a very quick plug. There is a donation page on the PNSQC website. All of you, when you have a moment, go take a look. And if it's convenient for you, think about the good cause that PNSQC is doing, giving back to the software quality community, and give us a generous donation. We have a campaign going on that we're raising money to fund, to support speakers to come to PNSQC to deliver their presentation in October, as well as to allow us to offer subsidized or possibly even free training for those folks that we all have a continuous need to learn more about the software quality and software engineering field. So thank you again, and I return the floor back to Moss for a final word.
Let's see. My last word will be automation. Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Moss. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank y'all.
Yeah,
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Let's do this again.